Lesson 1, caffeine. Okay, I have a lot to say about caffeine, but first of all, it'll turn you into this kittenzilla. So you gotta be careful with caffeine. So I have narcolepsy, and the first part of my life, I thrived, or not thrived, but survived-ish off of coffee. And I ended up having problems falling asleep and crashing during the day nearly every day. You know, while I was studying or typing or reading or listening to a seminar, I'd probably be out, even though I was consuming a lot of coffee. I also felt anxious, and I didn't know what to do because I thought that that was my only option. You know, I eventually got on medication. It didn't really help anyways. But I ended up having tea, and I started drinking tea, black tea, and I suddenly realized, okay, maybe I don't get this spiky high that makes me feel like I can conquer the world. But I also suddenly was not falling asleep when that had never been the case. I was not falling asleep. I was able to stay awake the whole day off of 1 or 2 cups of tea. What? Right? So caffeine comes in many different shapes and sizes and colors, doesn't it? But what I learned was, after doing some research, I believe it's the tannins in the tea that help stop the immediate absorption, so the spike and drop, and it just gives you this kind of feeling, energy, but not too much, and no crashes. That was what I learned and figured out from observing my body when it came to caffeine. I also don't get anxiety with the tea, but anytime I go back to drinking coffee, because I love coffee, but I end up immediately feeling like anxious. So take it from somebody who drank loads of coffee every single day. When you're living in that, you don't realize how crappy you feel when it's your norm every day. You don't realize that you're feeling anxious and that your thoughts are racing. You don't realize this stuff until you remove it from your life for a while and then go back to it. And then you're like, oh, wow, this is intense. And it's intense because you're not experiencing it anymore and because you're not as immune to it, you know. But it's also like, oh, this was something that I was just used to all the time. I can't believe I was functioning like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with coffee, but there's better ways to balance out and not drink as much coffee that will not affect the way you feel and your mind as much. So energy and coffee, that's one thing. The other thing is, when it comes to intuitive eating and caffeine, I have always noticed that drinking coffee first thing or even tea first thing in the morning equals having a suppressed appetite. So I would drink coffee and I wouldn't feel hungry. So I would go until like noon and then I'd be starving. I did that a lot. That's not good, because what ends up happening later on is that your body wants to make up for those calories that you missed in the morning, my friends. And so it might show up as, I'm extra hungry at dinner, I'm extra hungry at lunch, I want extra snacks, or it's after dinner and I feel uber snacky. It doesn't matter. Your body's going to try to make up for stuff when you cut it out. It just does. So my biggest suggestion to people is always make sure that you eat something with your coffee in the morning. Don't skip it. And people are like, oh, but I never get hungry in the morning. It's because you never gave your body a chance to be hungry. And when it gets in that routine, it stops being hungry. It gives up. It's like, no, this is not the time you feed me. So your body's adaptable, but do you want it to be adapting to patterns that are not serving your health? Or do you want it to be adapting to patterns that do really give you the best health and vitality? Well, if you do, you might want to start establishing eating something with your coffee. I just tell people to eat small stuff first and then build up to something maybe more substantial, like my oatmeal that I'm going to post.